The Holy Gospel according to John. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I've had the pleasure, so for years I traveled and I went to a lot of different churches and I spoke in a lot of places, and I've kind of been all over. And when you're in Lutheran circles, especially like if you go to Minnesota or something where you can't swing a dead cat in a circle without hitting a Lutheran church, you get to see the names of all the Lutheran churches and kind of get to know all the names of the Lutheran churches. And there's a lot of common names, as you can imagine. How many of you have ever seen a Good Shepherd Lutheran church? Yeah, everybody's seen a Good Shepherd somewhere. How many of you have seen, a Faith Lutheran church? You've heard of a Faith Lutheran? I was a pastor at a First Lutheran church. Has anybody seen a First Lutheran church? I've always suggested we should have said First Lutheran Church ever on our sign, but they shot me down for that. Grace Lutheran Church was one I was going to say. And then a variety of saints, but in particular the Gospels. So St. Matthew, St. John, St. Mark's, St. Luke's, St. Paul. You've seen those, right? How many other Abiding Hope churches have you seen? It's an unusual name, isn't it? Isn't it sort of a different sort of name to come into? And one of the days, I would love to hear how they landed on this name, but I've grown to really love the name Abiding Hope Church. Now, how many of you have heard of a Hope Lutheran Church? A lot of those, right? But there's something important about that sense of abiding that I'm really drawn to, that I've really come to love about this. And it's the sense of abiding, which a word we don't use much unless you're the dude in the Big Lebowski, where you say abide. So to live in, to dwell in, to reside in, to actually, it's where you rest, it's where you hang out. And then hope. So this idea of not just hope as some sort of analogous noun that kind of hangs out there, but when we say abiding hope, it's the sense of learning to live in, to dwell, to have that place be the place where you sit, where you rest, where you create your soul, life, and being. That's a different concept. Are you with me so far? That's a different concept. Our series that's going to be kind of something we carry through the whole year, but that we're starting here in the season of Epiphany, is the series called Abide in Hope. Now we are making a slight play on our name, where we're abiding hope, but we're talking about Abide in Hope as our series. And we've, as Pastor Doug and as our staff and as all of us have talked about what this means, it's really started to really make an effect on me. It's really started to affect even the way I'm sort of seeing what it means to be here in our life and our community and where we are and our culture and all the rest. It's really made an effect on me. One of the things that Pastor Doug has brought to us that I thought was really interesting, the Greek word elpizo, the Greek word for hope, that original word hope wasn't a good thing. The way that the Greeks used that word hope was that you're delusional, This idea to be hopeful, to have el pizzo, means that you were deluding yourself, that the thing that you wanted actually didn't exist, and that you weren't going to find that hope. That hope was something else. But something happened within the Christian tradition, that the Christians took on this word that meant delusional and turned it into something completely different. The word hope doesn't mean delusional anymore. It actually means something that's possible, something that can be, something that we really can move towards and achieve. When we talk about Jesus casting this vision for all of us, a vision that brings hope, we're not deluding ourselves. This is actually something that we feel drawn to because we feel like it's a distinct possibility, that it can really happen. In our gospel text today, it's sort of an interesting text. It's sort of, I think it's almost a little silly, and I don't mean to make fun of Jesus or the Gospels, but it almost feels like a little kind of like, what was the guy's name that made the, I'm blanking on his name. He made David Copperfield, thank you, David Copperfield. David Copperfield-ish, where it sort of like came up to the jar and went, hocus pocus, alamajocus, and then when he turned away, it became wine of all things. Do you know what I mean? And for this to be like the very first, if this means this is the very first miracle, sign they call it, of Jesus revealing Jesus' self is just to turn water into wine, it feels a little silly. It feels like kind of certainly unconventional way of revealing yourself to the world, but also just sort of a way that you kind of start to have questions. I love how the person comes in and says, usually you give them the good wine until they're drunk, and then you give them terrible wine after that. But you have saved the good wine for later. But let's break down a little bit of what's sort of happening here and how this really does kind of point us towards something that looks more like hope. So first of all, weddings in themselves are hopeful occasions. They are occasions in which we are bringing people together to live into a life and into a future. And a lot of hopes come together in those weddings. A lot of things come together. Now, for those of you who have gone to or planned or been a part of weddings, you also have a lot of hope about how that wedding is going to go, right? You hope that everyone's going to get along. You hope that there's not going to be any fighting. You hope that people are going to enjoy themselves. You hope that the food will be good. You hope that the wine will be good. You hope these things. Now, these Jewish weddings didn't last an evening. They would go for 5, 6, 7 days. So running out of wine wasn't really sort of like, they had a couple bottles and they ran out. I mean, they had been having the celebration for days of what this was. And when they ran out of wine, it really meant that their hopes were dashed. Their hopes for this situation, for this reality, for this event that they want to bring into people, and that they want to show people life and love and goodness and bringing family and hope and all of these things together. Well, suddenly that was gone, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? And it's Jesus' mother. It's Jesus' mother who sees what this is like. If you've ever been the mother of a bride or the mother of a part of a wedding, how important that event is to see your family expand and to grow, to see that sort of thing happen. It's an important event. And so to fail in that, I can imagine that family might have felt a bit like a failure. And then to think about what might have been said about them afterwards and this whole event that they had been hopeful about, to see those things disappearing. And so when Jesus comes to restore and using this water into wine metaphor, is really restoring a sense of that community back together again. Restoring their sense of hope for what they want to offer for one another. Restoring a vision for what they want for that celebration to be. And bringing that, what was going to be a failed party, back into goodness and wholeness. Back into goodness. So it's a small thing, but at the same time, if we look at the bigger picture, it begins to expand about what hope really is. And then when we talk about this being as a part of a wedding, we're asking for this new couple to live in that hope for what they want their future to look like. And to offer that hope up and to live into that future means we want the celebration to be a sign of what we want your life to be like. And we don't want your life to run out, right? And so we offer this up. When I think about this, and I think about then, it really is about looking into our futures. Hope then is really saying, what is this about what we're doing now, which becomes a sign of what we want our future to look like? So that this wedding isn't just a now event. It really is pushing us into seeing what it means to live a hope in our future. So, because hope really often isn't about a present reality, but a desired future reality. About something that we hope for the world to look like in our future. It's something that we hope for all things to come together. It's something when we hope for it, we're not being deluded. We're saying we really hope that there will be a future. And then not only that, but when we say then we want you to abide in hope, which it means we don't want you just to sit there and say, well, I hope that happens. We want you to dwell and live in that future. We want to dwell in that vision. We want you to live for that hope. We want you to make your home in hope. To make your home in a place where you're living out of a place of possibility and good and the things that are to come. It's really easy to get stuck in our present and only see the dark and the hurt and the pain. But as our first text says, it's only when you're in the light can you see the light. So when we live in hope, do we see hope? Are you following me? So when we live and we dwell in hope, we see hope. And so as I've pondered that this week, and as I've pondered about what does it mean to live in hope, it means it changes my perspective of all things. I mean, really, it's been an eye-opening experience in a beautiful way this week to begin to see all things that I'm doing as dwelling in a hope, as being a sign of a hope, as in pushing me into a future that looks like hope. To live in that space has changed my heart. It's changed how I see things. It truly has. I got to hang out today with 23 high school kids and adults in the cold in downtown Denver, talking about the systems of poverty, talking about the hard choices that people who are in difficult circumstances have to make day in, day out. We went for a walk for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. One group didn't come back for an hour. Do you know how cold it was today? And we walked in our neighborhood to see what it looked like around the Colfax area and around Ogden and seeing what that area looked like and observing that. And then we sat in the seat of people who, the one that I had was, there's a woman who has a 2-year-old, but she doesn't live near family, and she has to decide whether she's going to go to work or stay home with her child, and she has nowhere to put her child. So if she does her child has to go to a friend's house or a neighbor's house so that she can get a minimum wage job, which is going to pay her $23,000 a year. Or, like these hard choices that they live in. And it's easy to be in that circumstance and be like, this doesn't feel hopeful. This feels hard, it feels dark. But then when we started to dwell in hope, we said, no, we can be hopeful that in this space, we can make the kind of things and put together the kind of steps that can help people like this live into a future so that their future would be better and brighter and more holy. We don't have to just abandon them to their circumstances. We can do something. We can step into something. We can help with something. And when you begin to have that framework, it suddenly changes the picture. This isn't a place of darkness, it's an opportunity for grace. It's an opportunity for hope. And then I was sitting there and I'm looking around at all of these young people who gave up their Saturday to drive downtown Denver just so they can ponder these questions. Y'all, that's hope. That's hope. These young people giving their time and energy to experience a vision of how the world can be restored. Pastor Julie just came back from a civil rights trip, where they walked this incredible journey in Montgomery and Birmingham. She was telling me about it before service today, and I really want to encourage you to come to Pastor Chats and hear about it. It's next week. It's not tomorrow morning, but next week. So you don't have to come back in the morning because it's going to be cold, but come back next week. But if you think about the circumstances that they were living in, it was hard. It was dark. It was difficult, but they hung on to a hope that the world could be different. They hung on to a hope that there could be something in the future that meant real change in the world. And they didn't just sit there and hope for it. They abide in it, they lived in it, and then they lived for it. They actually are moving that. And through their work, which still we have so much work to do in this area, but we have seen real change happen. We have seen real change happen. Still much to do, yes, but real change can happen. To abide in hope. To abide in hope means we transform the water in our hearts into the good, blessing, overflowing of abundant wine that God has for us. That there is a future that we can look forward to and say something good is coming. That the best is yet to come. When we come to the table, we talk about it being a feast. We talk about it being a feast. Today, you're going to get a little bit of bread and a little bit of wine. But it's just a flavorful, just a taste of the future that is coming for us. A hope, a real hope, where all will have enough to eat and all people will come together and we will all be one place. And to live in that hope, well, that changes everything, y'all. To abide in that hope, that changes everything. It doesn't make you someone who can sit. It makes you live for it and not just live in it. I want you this week to just chew on that phrase, to dwell in that phrase, to hold that phrase. Today, I'm going to abide in hope. I'm going to live in hope. And no matter what the circumstances around you, no matter what kind of hard things you run into, no matter what kind of things that are in your life, I want you to say, what does it mean if right now, in this place, I choose to abide in hope and not in hurt? Abide in hope and not just that my present circumstances define me. I'm going to abide in hope that there are things coming that are ahead of us, that the best is yet to come, that the feast is set, and we will be at that table, and all things will be brought together for good. What would it mean to change your life, your perspective, and maybe the people around you if you abide in hope? Well, I think it would look like water to wine. I think it would look like hurt to healing. I think it would look like division to unity. I think it would look like fear to faith. Hold on to that phrase this week and maybe all year round and see what the vision for God has for you to abide in hope. If you'll pray with me. Lord God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, on paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out in good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. In the name of love, whose name is Jesus. Amen.